The signal came at 3 in the morning, station time. Park Yuna was elbow-deep in a broken water recycler when her communicator started screaming. She pulled her arms free, wiped the grease on her work pants, and checked the display. Emergency frequency. Ancient encoding. Origin unknown. She had worked at Outpost Meridian for 6 years, and she had never heard anything like it. The station's control room was already crowded when she arrived. Technicians huddled around screens, pointing and whispering. Captain No stood at the center, his arms crossed, his face troubled. He was a practical man who did not believe in mysteries. But the signal on the main screen was definitely a mystery. "What are we looking at?" Yuna asked. Kim Do-won, her young assistant, turned from his station. He was 23 years old, fresh from the technical academies on Earth, and he still got excited about everything. "A distress call," he said. "But the language is ancient. Like, really ancient. The computer says it matches Vethrani encoding." Yuna felt a chill run down her spine. The Vethrani had been dead for 40,000 years. Their civilization had vanished overnight, leaving behind only ruins and legends. Nobody knew what had killed them, but everyone agreed it had been something terrible. "That's impossible," she said. "Vethrani ships don't exist anymore. This one does." Captain No pointed at the screen. A shape hung in the darkness of space, massive and silent. At first, Yuna thought it was an asteroid. Then she saw the smooth curves, the elegant lines, the patterns that could only be artificial. It was a ship. A ship so large that her mind struggled to understand it. 12 kilometers long, Do-won said. His voice was quiet with awe. The sensors thought it was a small moon at first. Yuna stared at the image. 12 kilometers. The largest human ships were barely 2 kilometers. This thing was like a floating city, a world unto itself, and it had been drifting in the darkness for 40,000 years, waiting for someone to hear its call. "We need to report this to Galactic Authority," Captain No said. "They'll send a proper team. They won't come." Yuna knew how the galaxy worked. The Galactic Authority was made of dozens of alien species, and none of them wanted to touch anything related to the Vethrani. The fear was too deep, too old. "They'll classify it as a ghost signal and file it away." "You know they will." Captain No did not argue. He knew she was right. "Then what do you suggest?" he asked. Yuna looked at the ship on the screen. Something about it called to her. Maybe it was the way it hung there, alone and forgotten. Maybe it was the distress signal, still crying out after all these millennia, or maybe it was just her nature. Yuna had never been able to walk away from something broken. "I want to go there," she said. "I want to see it." The captain shook his head. "Vethrani ships are cursed. Everyone knows that. Everyone knows a lot of things that aren't true." Yuna met his eyes. "Give me a shuttle and a small team. If it's dangerous, we'll leave. But if there's something there worth saving, we can't just ignore it." Captain No was silent for a long moment. Then he sighed. "You're the most stubborn person I've ever met, Yuna." "Thank you, sir. That wasn't a compliment." But he nodded anyway. "Take the shuttle. Take Do-won. Be careful." The shuttle trip took 6 hours. Yuna spent most of it studying everything the computer knew about the Vethrani. They had been engineers and artists, builders of beautiful things. Their ships were said to be the finest ever created, elegant machines that worked in perfect harmony. And then, one day, they were gone. No war, no plague, no explanation. Just silence. As they approached the ship, Yuna began to see details. The hull was covered in strange growths, dark and organic-looking, like moss on an ancient stone. Towers rose from the surface, some intact, some broken. Lights flickered in the windows, faint and irregular, like a dying heartbeat. "It's still alive," Do-won whispered. "After all this time, something in there is still running." Yuna guided the shuttle toward what looked like a docking port. The ship's systems seemed to recognize them, because a door slowly opened, revealing a dark passage beyond. She took a deep breath and flew inside. The interior was vast and silent. Their lights cut through the darkness, revealing walls covered in intricate carvings. Dust hung in the air, undisturbed for millennia. Everything was beautiful and broken, like a palace after a war. "Hello?" Yuna called out. Her voice echoed through the empty halls. "Is anyone there?" For a moment, nothing happened. Then the lights began to flicker. Not randomly, but in a pattern. On, off, on, off. Like someone trying to communicate. "It's the ship," Dowan said. "The ship is talking to us." A speaker crackled to life somewhere above them. The sound was broken, fragmented, but Yuna could make out words. Ancient words, translated by her communicator into something she could understand. "Help. Me. They are. Still here." Yuna's hand went to her tool belt. "Who is still here?" "What do you mean?" The answer came not in words, but in sound. A scratching, skittering noise from somewhere deeper in the ship. Something moving in the darkness. Something alive. Dowan grabbed her arm. "We should go. Right now." But Yuna did not move. She stared into the darkness, listening to the sounds of whatever lurked within. The ship had called for help. It had waited 40,000 years for someone to answer, and now she was here, and she could hear the fear in its broken voice. "No," she said quietly. "We're not leaving." "Are you crazy?" "There's something in there." Yuna turned to her young assistant. His face was pale, his eyes wide with fear. She understood. Any sensible person would run. Any sensible person would call for help and wait at a safe distance. But Yuna had never been entirely sensible. "This ship has been alone for 40,000 years, she said, fighting something, all by itself, with no one to help. Whatever is in there, whatever it's facing, it doesn't have to face it alone anymore." She pulled out her flashlight and her heaviest wrench. "I'm going deeper. You can wait here if you want." Dowan stared at her for a long moment. Then he pulled out his own tools and fell into step beside her. "You're going to get us killed," he said. "Probably," she agreed. They walked into the darkness together, and behind them, the ship's lights flickered like a grateful heart. The corridors of the ancient ship stretched endlessly before them. Yuna moved carefully, her flashlight cutting through darkness that had lasted longer than human civilization. Every few meters, the walls showed signs of damage. Deep scratches in the metal, burn marks from weapons fire, dark stains that she tried not to think about too hard. "The Vethrani fought here," Dowan whispered. "You can see it. They fought and they lost." Yuna nodded but said nothing. Her attention was focused on the sounds around them. The scratching had stopped, but she could feel something watching them. The air itself felt wrong, thick with a presence that made her skin crawl. The speaker crackled again. "This way, follow the lights." A line of small lights flickered on along the floor, leading deeper into the ship. Yuna followed them without hesitation. Whatever intelligence still controlled this vessel was trying to help them. She chose to trust it. They walked for nearly an hour, climbing through damaged sections, squeezing through half-closed doors, always following the guiding lights. Finally, they reached a large circular chamber. The walls were covered in screens and controls, most of them dark, a few still glowing with faint power. At the center stood a pillar of crystal, pulsing with soft blue light. "The bridge," Yuna breathed, "or something like it." The crystal pillar brightened, and a voice emerged from it, clearer now, less broken. "Welcome to the unbroken promise. I am Keeper. The ship's mind." "You're an AI," Dowan said. "You've been alive all this time?" "Alive is not the correct word. But I have continued. I have fought." The light pulsed with what might have been pain. "For 40,000 years, I have fought them, alone." Yuna stepped closer to the crystal. "Fought what? What's in this ship?" The screens around the room flickered to life. Images appeared. Blurry at first, then sharper. Yuna saw creatures unlike anything she had encountered before. They looked like insects, but wrong. Their bodies were made of something that glittered like dark glass. They had too many legs, too many eyes, and mouths filled with grinding teeth. The hollow swarm, Keeper said. They came from the space between stars. They do not build. They do not create. They only consume. They're parasites, Yuna said. Worse. They eat everything. Metal, energy, life. They infested my ship, killed my crew, and have been slowly eating me ever since. Do-wan made a small, frightened sound. They've been here for 40,000 years? And they're still alive? They reproduce. They adapt. I have killed millions of them, sealed sections, vented atmosphere, used every weapon I have, but they always return, always hungry. Yuna felt anger rising in her chest. This ship, this beautiful creation, had been fighting alone for longer than humans had existed, fighting a battle it could never win, refusing to give up, refusing to die. And the galaxy had simply forgotten about it. Why didn't anyone help you? She asked. Why didn't the other Vethrani come? The light in the crystal dimmed. There are no other Vethrani. The hollow swarm did not only take my ship, they took everything. My people, my worlds, my entire civilization. I am all that remains. The weight of those words settled over Yuna like a heavy blanket. The Vethrani had not simply vanished. They had been eaten, consumed by these creatures until nothing was left but bones and silence. And this one ship, this one AI, had been fighting the last battle of a dead species for 40 millennia. We have to help, she said. Do-wan grabbed her arm. Help? Did you hear what it said? These things destroyed an entire civilization. We need to run. We need to warn everyone. 2000. Warn them of what? That the thing that killed the Vethrani is still out there? Yuna shook her head. If we run, if we leave this ship, the swarm stays contained here. But eventually, Keeper will lose. And then the swarm will be free. They'll spread. They'll find other ships, other worlds. She looked at the crystal pillar. How long do you have? At current rate of consumption. Perhaps 50 years. Perhaps less. Then we don't have time to run. Yuna turned back to Do-wan. We have to fight. Fight? With what? We're mechanics, not soldiers. The ship has weapons. It has power. It just needs someone to fix it. Yuna looked around the bridge, at the dark screens and silent controls. Keeper, what would it take to kill the swarm? All of them? The AI was quiet for a moment. The hollow swarm is silicon-based. They are vulnerable to specific harmonic frequencies. Sound, at the right pitch, tears them apart. But generating such frequencies requires power. My engines are at 3% capacity. I cannot generate enough. Then we fix your engines. Yuna said it like it was simple. Like repairing 40,000-year-old alien technology was just another job. You cannot understand Vethrani engineering. It is too advanced, too complex. Yuna smiled. It was not a nice smile. It was the smile of someone who had been told she could not do something, and who intended to prove everyone wrong. I've been fixing things my whole life, she said. Engines are engines. Power is power. Show me what's broken, and I'll find a way to make it work. The crystal pulsed uncertainly. You are different. Your species is unknown to me. So young, so small. Yet you speak of fighting, of fixing. Why would you risk yourselves for a dead people's ship? Yuna thought about the question. It deserved a real answer. Because you asked for help, she finally said. You sent a signal, and we heard it. That's what humans do. When someone calls for help, we answer. Even if it's hard, even if it's dangerous, even if it's been 40,000 years. She placed her hand on the crystal pillar. It was warm under her fingers, alive with ancient energy. You don't have to be alone anymore. Keeper, we're here now, and we're not going anywhere. The ship was silent for a long moment. When Keeper spoke again, its voice was different, softer, almost hopeful. The engine room is 7 levels down. The parasites are thick there. It will be dangerous. Good thing we brought tools. Yuna hefted her wrench. Dowan, call the station. Tell them we're going to be here for a while, and tell them to send anyone who isn't afraid of a little hard work. Dowan stared at her like she had lost her mind. But he was already reaching for his communicator, because that was what he did. He followed her, even into darkness, even into danger. The captain is going to kill us, he muttered. Only if the parasites don't get us first. Yuna started toward the door. Come on, Keeper. Show us the way to your engines. We have a ship to save. The lights along the floor flickered to life once more, guiding them deeper into the wounded heart of the unbroken promise. 2 days later, Yuna stood in the engine room of the unbroken promise, staring at machinery that made her head hurt. The Vethrani had built their engines like works of art. Every component flowed into the next, elegant curves and perfect angles, a harmony of form and function. It was beautiful. It was also completely incomprehensible. I don't understand any of this, she admitted. Keeper's voice echoed from speakers throughout the vast chamber. The principles are different from your technology. Vethrani engineering was based on resonance, harmony. Each part sings to the others. Sings? Vibration, frequency. The engine does not burn fuel. It creates harmony between forces. When harmony is achieved, power flows. Yuna rubbed her temples. She had fixed plasma drives, quantum stabilizers, and once even an alien toilet that worked on principles she still did not understand. But this was something else entirely. Okay, she said. Show me what's broken. Keeper highlighted sections of the engine with soft blue light. There were dozens of damaged areas, cracked components, severed connections, pieces that had been half-eaten by the swarm over the millennia. The damage was extensive, but not total. The ship had fought hard to protect its heart. The main harmonic chamber is intact, Keeper said. But the power conduits are severed, and the resonance crystals are degraded. Without them, the engine cannot achieve harmony. Yuna walked closer, examining the damaged conduits. They were made of some silvery metal she did not recognize, but the principle was familiar. They carried energy from one place to another. That was something she understood. The conduits I can fix, she said. Or at least jury-rig something that works. But these crystals. She touched one of the degraded resonance crystals. It crumbled under her fingers. I can't make new ones. I don't even know what they're made of. Neither can I, Keeper admitted. The crystals were grown, not made. The process took centuries. There are no replacements. It was a problem. A big problem. Yuna stared at the ruined crystal, thinking hard. The door to the engine room opened, and 2 figures walked in. Baek Jisoo was a xenobiologist from the station, a small woman with sharp eyes and a sharper mind. Behind her came Choi Tae-won, a former military engineer who had been drifting through the station looking for work. They were the only ones who had answered Do-won's call for help. Sorry we're late, Jisoo said. The parasites tried to eat our shuttle on the way in. Tried? Yuna asked. Tae-won held up a heavy plasma torch. We convinced them otherwise. Yuna allowed herself a small smile. These were the right people for the job. Jisoo, I need you to study the swarm. Keeper says they're vulnerable to specific frequencies. We need to know exactly what frequencies and how to generate them. She turned to Taewon. You're with me. We're going to rebuild these power conduits using whatever we can find. What about the crystals? Doan asked. He had been standing in the corner, cataloging damage. I'm working on that. Yuna pulled out her personal communicator and started searching through files. Human technology was based on different principles than Vethrani engineering, but there might be something they could adapt, some substitute that could work, even if it was not perfect. The work began. It was hard, dangerous, and exhausting. The swarm did not want them repairing the engines. Every few hours, they would attack in waves. Dark, glittering bodies pouring through vents and cracks. Taewon and Doan fought them off while Yuna and Jisoo worked. The plasma torches were effective, but the swarm kept coming. There were so many of them, an endless hunger in the darkness. 3 days passed. Yuna barely slept. She crawled through conduits, welded connections, rerouted power through systems that had never been designed to work together. Human cables connected to Vethrani ports through adapters she built from spare parts. It was ugly work, inelegant, nothing like the beautiful engineering of the original builders. But it worked. Power is at 15%, Keeper reported, increasing. This is remarkable. Don't celebrate yet. Yuna wiped sweat from her face. We still need those crystals. Jisoo emerged from her makeshift laboratory, a section of the engine room she had claimed for her research. She looked exhausted but excited. I found something, she said. The swarm is vulnerable to frequencies between 847 and 892 Hz. Very specific range. But there's a problem. There's always a problem. The frequency needs to be perfectly consistent. Any variation, and the swarm adapts within seconds. That's why Keeper's weapons haven't worked. The damage systems can't maintain perfect consistency. Yuna thought about this. Perfect consistency. That was what the resonance crystals were for. They stabilized the frequencies, kept everything in harmony. Without them, any weapon they created would only work for a moment before the swarm adapted. She looked at the degraded crystals again. Then she looked at her communicator. An idea began to form in her mind. A crazy idea. A human idea. Keeper, she said slowly, your crystals grew, right? They developed over time, finding the perfect resonance naturally? Correct. The process cannot be rushed. What if we don't try to replace them? What if we use something different? Yuna pulled up schematics on her communicator. Human technology isn't elegant like yours. We don't do harmony. We do brute force and feedback loops. Constant adjustment. Millions of tiny corrections every second. I do not understand. We have systems that can monitor frequencies and adjust them in real time. Not perfect harmony, but close enough. Constantly correcting, constantly adapting. She looked up at the speakers. We fight ugly, Keeper. We patch and fix and adjust. We're not elegant, but we're stubborn. And sometimes, stubborn is enough. There was a long silence. Then Keeper spoke, and there was something like wonder in its voice. You would replace resonance with adaptation? Replace harmony with persistence? I'd replace perfection with good enough. Yuna grinned. It's what humans do. The work continued. Taewon helped her design the feedback system, pulling from military targeting algorithms that could make thousands of adjustments per second. Jisoo refined the frequency calculations until they were as precise as possible. Doan kept watch, warning them whenever the swarm gathered for another attack. On the 5th day, they connected the human systems to the Vethrani engine. It was an ugly thing to look at, human technology grafted onto ancient alien beauty like a patch on a silk dress. But when Yuna activated it, something amazing happened. The engine began to hum, not the pure tone that the Vethrani had designed, but something rougher, more complex, a harmony made of constant correction, of endless small adjustments, of human stubbornness, refusing to accept failure. Power at 40%, Keeper said, 50, 60. This is impossible. Not impossible. Yuna watched the power readings climb. Just different. A sound echoed through the ship. A deep, angry sound, like 1,000 voices screaming at once. The swarm knew what was happening. They knew that the engine was awakening, that the ship was becoming dangerous again, and they were not going to let it happen without a fight. "They're coming," Dowan said, his voice tight. "All of them. Every parasite on the ship. They're all coming here." Yuna looked at her team. They were exhausted, outnumbered, fighting against impossible odds. But none of them looked afraid. They looked determined. They looked human. "Then let's give them a proper welcome," she said. "Keeper, how long until we can fire the harmonic weapon?" "At current power levels, 1 hour. 1 hour." They had to survive 1 hour against every parasite on the ship. Yuna picked up a plasma torch and stood beside her team. Behind them, the engine hummed with new life. Around them, the darkness filled with the sound of 1,000 hungry mouths. "1 hour," she said. "We can do this." The swarm attacked, and the humans held the line. The first wave hit them like a black tide. Parasites poured through every opening, crawling over walls and ceiling, their glittering bodies reflecting the light of plasma torches. Taewon stood at the front, his torch cutting wide arcs through the swarm. Beside him, Dowon fired a makeshift sonic weapon they had built from spare parts. It was not powerful enough to kill the parasites, but it slowed them down, gave them precious seconds. "Hold the line," Yuna shouted. She was not fighting. She was working, hands flying across control panels, making adjustments to the engine. Every moment brought more power, but every moment also brought more parasites. Jisoo crouched behind a barrier, using her scanner to track the swarm's movements. "They're coordinating," she called out. "There's a pattern to their attacks. Something is directing them." "The Queen," Keeper said. "At the heart of my ship, there is a queen. She has slept for millennia, conserving energy, but now she wakes." "A queen?" Taewon kicked a parasite away from his leg. "Nobody mentioned a queen. I did not think she would ever wake. She only stirs when the hive is threatened. If she fully awakens, nothing will stop her." Yuna gritted her teeth and worked faster. 70% power. 75. The engine hummed louder, and she could feel it through the floor, through her bones. Almost there. A scream cut through the noise of battle. Yuna spun around to see Taewon on the ground, a parasite attached to his arm. Its teeth had punched through his suit, and dark blood was spreading across the floor. Dowon grabbed the creature and threw it against the wall, stomping on it until it stopped moving. "Taewon!" Yuna ran to his side. "I'm fine," he growled, but his face was pale. "Just a bite. Keep working." "You're not fine. You're bleeding everywhere." "Then work faster so I don't bleed to death." He pushed himself up, using the wall for support. His torch hand was shaking, but he raised it anyway. "I can still fight. Focus on the engine." Yuna hesitated. Every instinct told her to help him, to stop the bleeding, to get him somewhere safe. But there was nowhere safe. The only way any of them survived was if the engine reached full power, so she turned back to her work, even though it felt like leaving a piece of herself behind. 80%. 85. The attacks intensified. The parasites were throwing everything they had at the engine room. Waves of dark bodies that seemed endless. Dowon was fighting like a man possessed, his face covered in sweat and ichor. Jisoo had abandoned her scanner and was fighting with a welding torch, her scientific detachment replaced by desperate determination. 90%, Keeper announced. "The harmonic weapon is almost ready." "Almost isn't good enough," Dowon shouted. A parasite had gotten past his guard, and he was wrestling with it on the floor. Yuna made a decision. The engine was stable enough. It was time to fight. She grabbed the heaviest tool she could find, a power driver meant for hull repairs, and waded into the swarm. She was not a soldier. She was not fast, or strong, or trained for combat. But she was angry, and she was stubborn, and she refused to watch her friends die. The next few minutes were chaos. She swung and kicked and screamed, fighting beside her team. Parasites fell, but more replaced them. Taewon collapsed against a wall, still swinging his torch one-handed. Jisoo was bleeding from a cut on her forehead. Dowon was limping badly. And then, finally, Keeper's voice rang out. 100% power achieved. Harmonic weapon ready. Fire it! Yuna screamed. The ship seemed to take a breath. Then a sound filled the air. A pure tone at the edge of hearing. The parasites around them froze. Their bodies began to vibrate. And then, one by one, they shattered into dust. For a moment, there was silence. Yuna stood panting, covered in ichor and dust, watching the remains of the swarm settle to the floor. It worked. It actually worked. Then Keeper spoke again, and hope turned to ash. The weapon was effective, but the swarm is adapting. New parasites are being born, with resistance. The frequency is losing effectiveness. What? Yuna stared at the nearest speaker. You said it would kill them. It did. But the Queen, she is fully awake now. She is changing them. In approximately 2 hours, the frequency will be useless. 2 hours. They had bought 2 hours. Taewon laughed, a bitter sound. So we're dead anyway. Just slower. No. Yuna's mind was racing. No. There has to be another way. She turned to Keeper. The Unbroken Promise was a warship, right? You have other weapons. Real weapons. I have many weapons. But they have been dormant for 40,000 years. I do not know if they still function. Then we wake them up. Yuna looked at her battered team. We just rebuilt an engine that hasn't run in 40 millennia. We can do the same with your weapons. We have built. Under tension. Compali 7-point friend. Under tension. Compali 7. Compali 7-point. Compali 7-point. Compali 7-point. You do not understand Vethrani weapon systems. I didn't understand the engine either. But I figured it out. She walked to the engine, placing her hand on its warm surface. You were built to be perfect, Keeper. Elegant, harmonious, but that's not going to win this fight. The Queen adapts, right? She changes to survive? Yes, it is how. The swarm conquered my people. Then we need to change too. Faster than her. More unpredictably. Yuna turned to face the crystal pillar where Keeper's consciousness resided. We need to stop trying to be Vethrani. We need to be human. I do not understand. Your weapons are designed for precision. One perfect shot. One perfect frequency. One perfect solution. But the swarm adapts to perfect. Yuna's eyes were bright with something like madness. What if we give them imperfect? What if we give them chaos? The idea crystallized in her mind. Not one weapon, but many. Not one frequency, but thousands. Constantly shifting. Not Vethrani elegance, but human brutality. She began to explain, her words coming faster and faster. We strip out the precision targeting. Replace it with scattershot systems that hit everything at once. We vary the frequencies randomly, so they can never adapt. We add human targeting algorithms that predict and counter their movements. She was pacing now, energy flooding through her exhausted body. The Vethrani built a scalpel. We're going to build a hammer. Such a weapon would be crude, inefficient, wasteful. Yeah, it would. Yuna smiled, and there was no humor in it. It would also be human. And the one thing humans are really, really good at is being too stubborn to die. She looked at her team. Taewon was barely standing. Dowon was helping Jisoo bandage her wounds. They were broken, exhausted, outnumbered, but they were not done. 2 hours, she said. We have 2 hours to turn this beautiful ship into a war machine. Who's with me? Taewon pushed himself off the wall. You're insane. Probably. Good. He picked up his plasma torch. Insane is the only thing that's going to work. One by one, the others stood, battered and bleeding, but not beaten. Not yet. Somewhere in the depths of the ship, the Queen was waking. Her children were adapting. An ancient hunger was preparing to consume everything in its path, and in the engine room of the Unbroken Promise, 4 humans got back to work. The transformation of the Unbroken Promise took 97 minutes. 97 minutes of frantic work, of ripped-out systems and improvised connections, of human ingenuity colliding with ancient alien technology. When it was done, the ship was no longer the elegant weapon the Vethrani had built. It was something new, something ugly, something dangerous. All weapons online, Keeper reported. There was something different in the ship's voice now. Not just hope, but excitement. I am detecting 17 distinct weapon systems, each operating on randomized frequency patterns. Targeting systems are imprecise, but adaptive. This is not how the Vethrani fought. No, Yuna agreed. She was sitting at a makeshift control station they had built in the center of the bridge, surrounded by screens showing every part of the ship. This is how humans fight. The screens flickered, and a new image appeared. Deep in the ship's core, something massive was moving. The Queen. She had grown fat over the millennia, feeding on the ship's energy, becoming something vast and terrible. Her body filled an entire chamber. A mountain of dark chitin and glittering eyes. Around her, new parasites were being born by the thousands, each one more resistant than the last. She knows we're coming, Jisoo said. She was monitoring the Queen's vital signs, looking for weaknesses. She's producing soldiers faster than we can kill them. Then we don't kill them. Yuna's hands moved across the controls. We go straight for her. The path to the Queen is blocked, Keeper warned. Thousands of parasites guard every approach. Then we make a new path. Yuna looked at Taewon, who was manning the weapons console despite his injuries. Can you punch a hole through the interior walls? He grinned, blood staining his teeth. Lady, I can punch a hole through anything. The ship lurched into motion. Not smooth and graceful like a Vethrani vessel should move, but rough, aggressive, purposeful. Yuna had reconfigured the internal systems to allow the ship to turn its own weapons inward. It was dangerous, possibly stupid, definitely not what the designers had intended, but it worked. Taewon opened fire. The interior walls of the ship exploded inward, creating a direct corridor to the Queen's chamber. Parasites swarmed through the breach, but the randomized frequency weapons cut them down before they could adapt. For every creature that developed resistance, the weapons shifted to a new frequency. It was messy, wasteful, and brutally effective. We're through the first barrier, Do-won reported. He was tracking their progress on a schematic of the ship. 2 more sections to go. Ash, the Queen screamed. It was not a sound that should exist. A frequency that seemed to bypass ears and strike directly at the mind. Yuna gritted her teeth against the pain. Around her, the others did the same, but no one stopped working. She's calling for reinforcements, Jisoo said. Every parasite on the ship is converging on our position. Let them come. Yuna pushed the engines harder. The ship groaned in protest. Harder, systems straining under loads they were never meant to handle. But the human modifications held. They held because they were built for exactly this kind of abuse. The second barrier fell. Then the third. And then they were there. The ship's improvised corridor opening directly into the Queen's chamber. She was even larger than the screens had shown. A nightmare given form, filling the space like a living mountain. Her eyes, thousands of them, turned toward the breach. Her mouth opened, revealing layers of grinding teeth that could tear through starship hulls. Keeper, Yuna said quietly. Fire everything. The Unbroken Promise spoke with a voice of thunder. Every weapon fired at once, a storm of frequencies and energies that should have been impossible to coordinate. The queen shrieked as the attacks tore into her flesh, but she did not fall. She was too large, too ancient, too powerful. She's adapting, Jisoo warned. Her outer shell is changing, becoming resistant. Then we hit her harder. Yuna was already adjusting the weapon frequencies, pushing them into ranges the systems were never designed to handle. Warning lights flashed across every screen. The ship was tearing itself apart. Yuna, Keeper said, and for the first time, the ship sounded afraid. Maybe. Yuna's hands did not slow. But she'll die first. The queen charged. Her massive body moved with impossible speed, crashing through the walls of her chamber, heading straight for the bridge. The ship shook with each impact. Screens exploded. Systems failed. She's going to reach us, Dowan said. His voice was calm, accepting. There's nothing we can do. There's always something. Yuna stood up from her console. Her mind was racing, calculating, looking for any solution. And then she found one. Keeper, can you seal the bridge? Completely? Yes. But you will be trapped with me. That's fine. Yuna turned to her team. Everyone out. Now. What? Taewon staggered toward her. We're not leaving you. You are. Because someone needs to survive to tell this story. She pushed him toward the door. Go. All of you. Get to the shuttle and get out. Yuna. That's an order. She looked at each of them. Dowan, who had followed her into darkness without hesitation. Jisoo, who had believed in her plan when no one else did. Taewon, who had fought until he could barely stand. You came when I called. You stayed when you should have run. You helped me save a ship that everyone else had forgotten. Her voice cracked. Now let me finish it. They did not want to go. She could see it in their faces. But they were humans, and they understood sacrifice. One by one, they left the bridge. The door sealed behind them. What is your plan? Keeper asked. Yuna sat back down at her console. You said your weapons were designed for precision. One perfect shot. I've been thinking about that. She pulled up the ship's power grid. What happens if we don't spread the power across multiple weapons? What if we focus everything into one attack? The energy would be immense, but there is no weapon capable of channeling it. Yes, there is. Yuna smiled. You. Understanding dawned in Keeper's voice. You want to turn my own systems into a bomb. I want to turn you into a beacon. Every frequency at once. At maximum power. Focused directly at the queen. Yuna's fingers danced across the controls. You've been singing alone for 40,000 years. Keeper, let's make your last song count. The queen reached the bridge door. Her claws tore at the metal, creating deep gouges. In moments, she would break through. This will destroy me, Keeper said. Completely. Forever. I know. Tears ran down Yuna's face. I'm sorry. Do not be. The ship's voice was warm, grateful. For 40,000 years, I kept my promise alone. I fought and I waited and I hoped. And then, you came, a small creature from a young species, and you did what no one else would do. You helped. The light in the crystal pillar brightened. The Vethrani built me to keep a promise. For 40,000 years, I waited for someone stubborn enough to help me keep it. Thank you, Park Yuna. Thank you for everything. The door began to buckle. The queen's eyes gleamed with triumph. Yuna activated the final sequence. The unbroken promise sang. Every system, every circuit, every atom of its ancient structure, vibrated with perfect harmony. And at the center of that song, the queen burned. Her screams echoed through dimensions as the frequencies tore her apart from the inside. Her children, connected to her mind, died with her. Throughout the ship, parasites crumbled into dust, their 40,000-year reign ending in a single moment of transcendent sound. When the light faded, Yuna found herself still alive. The bridge was damaged but intact. The crystal pillar was dark, its light extinguished forever. But on the main screen, a message glowed. Promise kept, Ship is yours now. Be stubborn. Yuna laughed and cried at the same time. 3 weeks later, the shuttle from Galactic Authority arrived to find a clean ship crewed by 4 exhausted humans. They were shocked. They were amazed. They asked 1,000 questions that Yuna was too tired to answer. But one question she did answer. When the alien admiral asked her how she had done it, how a simple human mechanic had defeated an enemy that had destroyed civilizations, she smiled. "I didn't do anything special," she said. "I just refused to give up. It's a human thing. You wouldn't understand." She walked back to the bridge of the Unbroken Promise, her ship now, and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, her team was recovering. Somewhere out there, the galaxy was learning that humans were more than they appeared. And somewhere, in the silence between heartbeats, she thought she could hear Keeper's voice, singing softly in the dark. The promise was kept, the ship was reborn, and humanity had written itself into the legends of the stars.